We hope you enjoy The Magicians, The Moonlight Cavalier by Rachel Lawson.
I ride the road for my king and country by night. I moonlight as a cavalier. I know without me we'll all fall into blood and misery. I know this is a fool's errand, so a fool I be to the world.
The court of King James I bustled with people seeking his favour and attention. At that moment, the one who had the king's attention was a minor poet and knight from the country who had earned his title for donating some rare old works of poetry to the king's own library. I ride the road, robbing the rich to feed the poor. I ride for the king and the people. To help my fellow man to live, I was a knight of God in the Holy Land. When I returned, I was betrayed and lost my home and good name. They call me Robin. I am Robin Hood. I lead the merry men, and we fight for our land in the forest against the hated Sheriff of Nottingham and Prince John, who tries to usurp the crown, the man said, reciting a new poem he wrote. The king and court admitted it was the best poem he'd written yet, and that it was about Robin Hood didn't hurt it either. Sir Blake, it was a masterpiece, but you are hardly a convincing Robin Hood, said the king. Blake nearly dropped the poem he was reading off. Well, we all can't be Robin Hood. I couldn't live without a good wig, said Sir Blake of Wigmore dismissively. A wig? Are you a politician? Asked a lady courtier. Lordy, no, chuckled Sir Blake. Sir Blake is a man of words, not a man of ideology, said the king. Sir Blake smiled feebly, fussing with his lace cuffs. I wouldn't know what to do if I were asked for an opinion other than which fashionably good wig or pair of boots to wear, said Sir Blake, puzzled. Wigs and boots aren't everything, said the lady. No, the wig makes the man, Sir Blake said animatedly. By your wig, you must be a great man, joked the king. Blake, whose wig was immaculate, smiled and laughed. I must be your majesty, Sir Blake added, adjusting his wig. If only all my knights were so harmless, laughed the king. Later, when he was alone, Sir Blake removed his wig. The wig makes the man, he muttered and chuckled, roughly putting the wig away in his coat and pulling out a mask, tying it over his face. Looking to see if he was observed, he wasn't. He looked younger without the wig, a mere youth, almost unrecognizable. He was on horseback. He rode out of the blind alley at full pace. He rode to a place where people had gathered. The Moonlight Cavalier, people muttered in fear and awe as he rode by. I cannot let you harm this innocent woman, Thorn, cried Sir Blake in a strong, firm, heroic, light tenor voice at the king's head. Witch hunter Sir Ezekiel Thorn, who was a Puritan evangelist and the enemy of the Moonlight Cavalier. This is a witch, she consorts with the evil one, shouted back the self-assured zealot. She is no more a witch than you are, Blake retorted. He rode straight onto the scaffold, dismounted in one fluid motion, and placed himself between Thorn and the terrified woman. Steel clashed in the moonlight as Blake forced Thorn back, disarming him and scattering the executioners. He untied the intended victim, a seamstress who was accused of witchcraft for bewitching a man by a jealous rival. The cavalier quickly led her to his horse, said, "Jump," and they jumped on and rode away at a gallop, making their escape. Thorn, humiliated and furious, vowed to catch the cavalier before nightfall. By dawn, the whole city was whispering about the cavalier's midnight rescue. Later that day, in the court of King James, there was an unwanted visitor, a very angry Thorn. "That cavalier is so cavalier now, he's stolen a witch we were about to hang," shouted Thorn at the king. "You should have him hung as a collaborator." "I don't know the man. How am I supposed to do anything? I am just a king," said the king shortly. Oh, he's already got his head in the noose, I hear, for his cavalier ways, remarked Sir Blake, who was playing the fop again. Who is this insolent man, your majesty? Sir Ezekiel Thorn, the king said. Thorn looked at Sir Blake curiously, wondering who this man was. He didn't recognize Blake as the fop. Sir Easy, eh? Said Sir Blake, more than a little amused. No, do not call me that. I'm Sir Ezekiel Thorn. I am no easy anything, grumbled Thorn. You said it, not me, Sir Blake yawned. Oh, but Sir Easy, it suits you so well. My name is Ezekiel Thorn, moaned Thorn, offended. Yes, yes, but that's so many syllables, replied Sir Blake lethargically. Everyone watching the little scene laughed. Thorn seethed. Sir Blake chuckled. Who is this fool? Asked Thorn. Sir Blake Makepeace of Wigmore, said the king, amused. His name suits him, said Thorn, noticing his perfect wig and foppish clothing. He's a poet. Tell him your I'm Robin Hood poem. It is a great poem. He will love it. He likes the Cavalier Robin Hood, said the king. I'm not in the mood for poetry, Thorn snapped, in no mood to humour fools. Shame it is really. Good, said Sir Blake, sighing. Then he apologised to the king because he and his wife, Angela, had to leave to go home. On the way home in their carriage, Blake's wife, Angela, confronted her husband for his recklessness. Blake, you shouldn't provoke him. He's dangerous. Blake chuckled and said, I provoke everyone. It's my charm. You're impossible, she said. She was enchanted by him. Blake smiled and replied, easily so. That night, the Cavalier was sighted by a soldier who sent a message to Thorn, who had a bounty on the Cavalier. They set up an ambush and caught him by surprise. He fought them, and in the battle, the soldier died. Leaving Thorn and the Cavalier fighting alone, Thorn stepped forward, sword raised, eyes burning with righteous fury. Devil, he hissed, your time is done. Blake steadied himself, breath sharp in the cold air. You always were dramatic, Sir Easy. Thorn roared and charged. Steel rang through the forest. They circled, blades sparking, each strike heavier than the last. Thorn fought with brute zeal, Blake with precision and grace. For a moment Blake gained the upper hand, then his wound betrayed him. He faltered. Thorn drove his sword home. The Cavalier fell to his knees, then to the earth, moonlight pooling around him like silver blood. Thorn stood over the body, chest heaving. Divine justice, he whispered. I wonder who he was, muttered Thorn, looking at his fallen foe. He bent down and unmasked the body. It surprised him. He recognized him. You, the insolent fool, said Thorn. His fallen foe did something impossible. He winked. Thorn was horrified. Witch, hissed Thorn. The reaction shocked Thorn. The body moaned and got up. Thorn splashed holy water over Blake's face. Blake sputtered. Thanks for that. I needed a wash. Evening, Sir Easy. Thorn pulled out a cross and poked it in Blake's face. Blake screamed like his face was on fire. Nothing happened. Thorn stumbled back, clutching his cross as if it were a shield. Crosses don't hurt Anglicans either, laughed Sir Blake. Why did you act as if it hurt you then? Asked Thorn. I didn't want to disappoint you, Easy, chuckled Sir Blake and said, Sleep well, Sir Easy. I'll see you at dawn. Blake walked off, unmolested, as Thorn was too scared and confused to fight this witch. Thorn's dreams were haunted by the witch who kept returning to life in his dreams. When he awoke, he was positively terrified of Sir Blake, so he knew he had to stop this unholy beast who wouldn't stay dead. He thought about how he could control him by killing or threatening Lady Angela, Blake's wife, who was either a witch herself or a collaborator with him. All he needed was evidence, true or false. It didn't matter to him. Death would not take him, so Thorn would find another way. That day, Thorn stormed into the court, flanked by soldiers, their boots echoing like thunder, to the king's displeasure and shock. Thorn, what is the meaning of this invasion? Demanded the king. Blake tried to walk out of the room, leading his wife by the hand. Stop, Sir Blake, said Thorn. What do you want? Sir Blake said feebly as he stopped walking, Thorn chasing him. I came to trap a witch, said Thorn. Blake looked feeble. A witch? Where? Who? Said Sir Blake, sure he was after him. A witch called Makepeace of Wigmore, Thorn said shrewdly. I am too inept to be a witch. I'd turn myself into a frog if I were one by accident, Blake said defensively, trying to sound like a fool. I know, Sir Blake, I am not here for you, said Thorn. Sir Blake realized who he was after, so he stepped between his wife and Thorn protectively. She is no witch. She is my wife, and if you take her, you'll answer to me, Sir Blake said. Angela looked nervous and scared as everyone watched the scene, confused and afraid. Thorn, what proof have you? Said the king. She predicted the future before it happened, said Thorn. Angela and Sir Blake were time travelers from 2019, stuck in the past since the Roman age, so it was possible, and she wasn't human either. What did she predict? The king asked, frowning at her. Guy Fawkes's gunpowder plot, said Thorn. It was common knowledge in the future. I've done nothing wrong, said Angela, knowing of the plot but knowing it was a blatant lie. You lie, Sir Blake said, growing animated. The king was torn between suspicion and respect for her husband. His fear of witches won out. He allowed Angela to be taken. The court's gasps rippled through the chamber. Some backed away. Others whispered behind gloved hands were rumours about how Lady Angela had bewitched her husband, and he was so foolish. Lady Angela stood on the scaffold, hands bound, the noose swaying gently beside her. She kept her face calm, but inside she prayed, not for herself, but for her husband. She knew she was not immortal, only long-lived like her people, and that using her powers would expose far more than just her own secret. If she escaped by magic, she would doom Blake and her entire kind. So she stood still, silent, waiting. Beside her loomed Sir Ezekiel Thorn, stiff with expectation. His eyes scanned the crowd again and again. Where is he? Thorn muttered under his breath. Who? Asked King James, who stood on the platform to ensure Lady Angela received her last rites. She was a lady of the court, after all, and a friend. No one, Thorn lied quickly. The executioner shifted impatiently. What are we waiting for, Sir Ezekiel? Wait, Thorn snapped. The hangman grumbled under his breath. King James sighed. I'm sorry your husband hasn't come to see you go, he said to Angela, thinking it ungentlemanly of Blake, though he assumed the poor fool simply couldn't stomach the sight. The crowd murmured uneasily. Something was happening. Thorn felt it before he saw it. Then he froze. A lone rider approached through the parting crowd. The last man Thorn expected, Sir Blake Makepeace of Wigmore. He rode up to the scaffold, tied his horse with deliberate calm, and climbed the steps as though arriving late to a poetry reading. Angela's breath caught. He embraced her. Hello, my angel, he said. Thorn stepped forward. Are you coming out? He demanded, meaning as the witch he believed Blake to be. Blake ignored him. I came to see my wife. King James blinked in surprise. Hello, Sir Blake, said the king. Blake bowed slightly, the same shallow, courtly bow he always gave, the one that made him look harmless, foolish, soft. But when he straightened, something in his posture had changed. He stepped in front of Angela, shielding her with his body. Thorn's eyes narrowed. There it is. You're coming out at last. Blake ignored him again. He looked only at Angela, and she saw it in his eyes, the decision, the sacrifice, the end of the masquerade. He turned back to the king, voice steady. Your Majesty, forgive me. The king frowned. For what, Sir Blake? Blake reached up and removed his wig. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Without the wig, Blake looked impossibly young, too young. His hair dark, untouched by time, his face unlined, his eyes ancient. The king staggered back. God's wounds, what are you? Thorn pointed triumphantly. A witch! A devil who will not die! Blake held the wig in his hands like a discarded lie. This is who I am, he said quietly. A fool by day, a cavalier by night, a man who protects the innocent, including my wife. Angela's breath trembled. The crowd murmured in awe and fear. Thorn drew his sword. Seize him! Seize the witch! Blake stepped forward, unarmed, unafraid. If you touch her, he said, voice low and dangerous, I will show you what you should truly fear. The wind shifted. The sky darkened. The scaffold creaked beneath them. The fop was gone. The Moonlight Cavalier stood in his place. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Thorn's sword gleamed in the half-light. The king stood frozen, torn between fear and fascination. Angela pressed back against the post, eyes wide. The crowd held its breath. Then Thorn lunged, steel flashed. Blake caught the blade with his bare hand. A gasp tore through the onlookers. Blood welled between Blake's fingers, but he didn't flinch. He twisted, forcing Thorn's sword aside, and stepped between him and Angela. You should not have come, Thorn hissed. You should not have touched my wife, Blake replied. Thorn swung again, wild with zeal. Blake ducked, the blade slicing air where his head had been. The executioner stumbled back, nearly falling off the scaffold. Guards surged forward. Blake moved first. He kicked the nearest guard square in the chest, sending him tumbling down the steps. Another guard grabbed him from behind. Blake twisted, using the man's own momentum to flip him over the railing. The crowd screamed as the guard hit the ground below. Thorn roared and charged again. Blake seized a fallen guard's sword, drawing it in one smooth motion. The steel caught the moonlight, and for the first time the court saw him as he truly was. Not a fop, not a fool, a knight, their knight. Thorn struck with brute force. Blake parried, sparks flying. The scaffold shuddered under their feet as they traded blows. Thorn's heavy, punishing strikes against Blake's precise, fluid movements. You cannot win, Thorn snarled. I don't need to win, Blake said. I only need to get her out. He feinted left, then slammed his shoulder into Thorn, knocking him back into the execution post. Thorn's sword clattered to the boards. Blake didn't finish him. He turned to Angela, cutting her bonds with a single stroke. Jump, he said. She didn't hesitate. He grabbed her hand, and together they leapt from the scaffold. Blake landed first, breaking the fall, then pulled her upright. Behind them, Thorn screamed, Seize them! Witches both! Blake whistled sharply. His horse reared, broke free of its tie, and galloped toward them. Blake swung Angela onto the saddle, vaulted up behind her, and kicked off. Arrows flew, guards shouted. The king called for order, but the Moonlight Cavalier was already gone, cloak snapping behind him like a banner of rebellion, and the city erupted into chaos. The king ordered the witches to be caught and killed, but Blake and Angela vanished into the night. When days passed with no sign of them, the king's fear curdled into anger. He turned on Thorn, demanding why he had not revealed Sir Blake's true nature sooner. Thorn, cornered and furious, called the king a traitor, a coward, and a man in league with the devil. He insisted Blake was a demon who could not die. He was wrong. Blake wasn't. But the accusation sealed Thorn's fate. King James had him dragged away and executed as a traitor. It did not save the king. Months later, the Puritans rose against him, calling him a traitor. He died by the axe, just as Thorn had. History swallowed them both. But Blake and Angela lived. They escaped England by ship, sailing east until the world changed around them. At last, they reached Japan, a place far from Thorn, far from kings, far from nooses and witch hunters. We will have to start a new life again, Blake said quietly, turning to his wife. Angela touched his cheek. Take off the wig, Blake, she murmured. I prefer the man beneath it. Blake removed it slowly, the last mask falling away. He smiled, truly smiled, and kissed her as the ship carried them toward a new dawn.
I'm moonlight as a cavalier. I know without me we'll all fall into blood and misery. I know this is a fool's errand, so a fool I be to the world. My truth they cannot see by day, but in the clear night's light I show what a man I can be. I am the Moonlight Cavalier, the king's champion at night, and wear a fool's cap by day. This is a fool's errand, so a fool I be to the world. My truth they cannot see by day, but in the clear night's light I show what a man I can be. I am the Moonlight Cavalier, the king's champion at night, and wear a fool's cap by day. Save death